Glenn, thanks so much for taking the time to join us again. All right, before we get into your book, which is just fascinating, so good, can you just tell us your general take on everything that's happened over the past couple of weeks? This is the craziest time in my political life. Would you say it's the craziest time in yours?
Oh, by far.
Really?
By far. Yeah. Name a time. Name a time. If I was to sum it up in just a few words, I would say it would have to be Jesus is coming. It's just, it's so dark. It's so twisted. We've lost sight of everything that is real. And we are, if you think that the last few weeks have been eye-opening, you can't imagine what the world will be like in December of this year.
Right. Well, I want to hear some of your predictions. I mean, what do you think is going to happen at the DNC with this election? Do we have an October surprise? I mean, what's your thinking?
So I don't know. I mean, if I could talk as a fiction writer, not as a prediction, because everything is so up in the air. Really, Allie, anything could happen.
Right.
So let's just look at the things that are possible. The 1968 convention in Chicago was a nightmare. It changed America. It changed our course. Luckily, it was right at the end of the 60s hippies and everything else. It was that and Altamont that changed the course, and we got off the hippie thing and we started finding the Jesus revival era. This year promises to be, I think, as explosive as the 68, if not more so. Anything could happen, especially with our Secret Service being as poorly run as they are right now. I would imagine that we are going to see some very unusual things in the streets of Chicago. I hope this was the last attempt on assassination, but I don't think so. Our president is so ill that I think he could pass away from natural causes at any time. He started taking his responsibilities and delegating literally in writing. I didn't even know you could do this, but he is delegating the presidential powers on certain issues like Ukraine to the State Department and to the Secretary of Treasury. I've never seen a president do that. Why would you do that? We're just in uncharted territory. Then who is going to be the nominee? I can't imagine it's going to be Kamala Harris.
Really?
Well, Barack Obama hasn't weighed in on it yet.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and that says a lot to me. He doesn't want Kamala Harris, and I think you're going to have possible chaos on the convention floor. It was Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi that were really responsible for the duck out of Joe Biden. And so Barack Obama will get his way one way or another. And I would imagine we're going to have chaos on the convention floor. You already are seeing the death of democracy with the Democrats. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And the Democrats seem to be okay with it, which is so bizarre. They would not allow the president to be challenged by anyone in the run-up. So you had all the primaries. Even though the people were saying, we want another choice, they wouldn't allow it to happen. They said he was fine. They were caught in a lie. Now the same people, Kamala and all the rest of them, that were saying he was fine are now saying he's got to step down, not from the presidency, just from the run.
Right.
It's too late. The GOP is going to file suit in several states because the laws forbid what they're trying to do. So again, the Democrats are going to have to try to change the rules of state state laws for voting. You're going to hand this over to who? The 5,000 people that were there in Chicago. And if they don't get it right, the superdelegates will then vote, and they'll nominate the president and expect everybody to be fine. This is a communist party system. This isn't America.
Right. So
Why is no one upset about that?
do you agree with the language calling this a palace coup?
Yes, I do.
Right.
I do. I think they knew in advance he should have been, the 25th Amendment should have been enacted a long time ago. And you can't tell me, I've been reading now from people who are saying, in 2021, I was in a meeting with him and it was shocking how bad he was. And he never came back to the caucus again in 2021. And now you're just saying something?
Right.
Honestly, Allie, who is running the country? They have been running the country through the office of the president, through all of the cabinet. They all have their own little fiefdom. They're running it. I don't know who's giving marching orders and direction, but it's not the president. They didn't want to invoke the 25th because why should we? It's working fine, according to them. They're getting everything done that they need to do while everybody's focused on Joe Biden. They're just getting it done.
Right.
All of these people should be called in front of Congress and have to answer for their actions.
Yeah, it was AOC on an Instagram Live recently. She said the Democratic donors and elites, they want Joe Biden out, and they also want to push Kamala Harris out, that they don't want her. I have no idea what elites she's talking about and what donors she's talking about, but it sounds like you might think that she's onto something.
Oh, I think she's absolutely right. I can't believe I'm agreeing with AOC, but she's absolutely right on this. Bernie Sanders knows this. Elizabeth Warren knows this. This is what they started in 2016, and they've just perfected it. And you can't just get rid of Kamala Harris. I am very concerned that the events that we have seen in the last few weeks could accelerate. We could lose the president through natural causes, be left with Kamala Harris. And if the elites don't want Kamala Harris, well,
What happens then?
She's gettable. She's gettable with the Secret Service. I don't want to believe that the Secret Service was in any way, shape, or form involved or just turned a blind eye. I want to claim that it was only incompetence that happened a couple of weeks ago, and that might be the truth. But we also now at this point have to consider it might have been a blind eye or worse. And we have to have these answers before we get to the convention in Chicago. Too much is at stake. Can you imagine if somebody shot Kamala Harris at this point?
Right.
Can you imagine? I mean, and Allie, look at what the leaders of the world who are against us are seeing. When President Reagan was shot, it was the most dangerous time in my childhood of remembering, because we were up head to head against the Soviet Union. We had not, met Gorbachev yet, and he's shot. And for a while there, who is in charge? And somebody came from the White House, I think it was Haig, and he said, I've got control. He was from the Pentagon. I have control of the White House now. Well, he didn't. That wasn't constitutional. And the conversation everywhere at the time was, what is our enemy thinking? We are in disarray. And that was only for a few days. Look at the disarray we're in. You think that people in Iran, in North Korea, in China, in Russia, anywhere that they don't like America, they're not looking at us right now and saying it is prime for the taking right now.
And yet, in his statement, President Biden said that we have never, ever in our history been better positioned to lead on the world stage than we have right now. I mean, I understand he has to say that. He has to say we have the greatest economy in the world and gaslight the public. But to make that kind of statement that we have an unprecedented leadership position on the world stage right now, that's bold.
When will the average person wake to this? I mean, we've been seeing this stuff, Allie. I mean, we've been together for a long time, and we've been talking about this stuff for a long time, saying, but you could still excuse it one way or another. You could still say, if you're on the other side, well, that's not happening. That's, that's this, and this, and you're just taking this out of context. There's no way, there's no other way for a thinking human being to look at what's happening and not say, we are in dire, dire trouble.
Yeah.
And we have to clean this mess up quickly, or the world will take us out.
Yes. You mentioned that we live in this dystopia now, and we can't even imagine what it's going to be like at the end of this year. And if the events of the past, 2 weeks and then 5 years have taught us anything, it's that we really can't predict the unpredictable. And that's just the age that we're living in now. You've written a fiction novel. Go ahead.
Hang on. Let me just say this.
Yeah.
Condoleezza Rice said to me, and this was in 2007, 6 or 7, and she used specific language, and it was biblical language. But she said, these, Glenn, are the birth pangs of the things to come. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Birth pangs, it's really interesting to think of a birth pang. Birth pangs first start, and then they get faster and harder and more severe and closer and closer and closer and speed up until you give birth to something.
Yes.
Look at how the birth pangs in the last 3.5 years have sped up.
Yeah.
It's relentless now. It's always happening. Every day you wake up and you're like, wait, what happened yesterday? That's going to speed up in the next few months, and we are giving birth to something. And I don't think it's a happy surprise.
Yeah. Yes. I remember that well, and it is an apt metaphor. Is that part of why you wrote this new book, Chasing Embers? It's a dystopian novel, and it does seem perfect for this age that we're describing.
So I've had this story in my head. I write stories in my head all the time, and then some of them make it actually to book form. But I wrote this in my head probably 2005 or 6, and I was reading Karl Marx and trying to understand Karl Marx. Have you ever read any Karl Marx? It's
a little bit. I can't say a lot, but yes.
It's insane, okay? How anyone could read that and go, that's logical. It's insane. It goes against human nature, all of it. And I remember reading it and thinking, why do people read this? Why do 20-somethings read this and think this is so genius? And yet they will never pick up anything from Thomas Jefferson. Never. And that's brilliant stuff. And I decided it's because for so long, it had been banned or it was underground, okay? Never banned here, but never popular to be. If you were a Marxist, it was never popular.
Right.
So when you're in your rebellion years, of course you read the things that make you a rebel, all right? And I thought, when are people going to start reading our rebellious period, are the true revolutionaries like Thomas Jefferson? And I thought, I think it's going to have to be lost or forbidden before it becomes popular again. So I started thinking about that and thinking about where the world was going with giant corporations and public-private partnerships and AI and everything else. And we all know how that could end. It most likely will end horribly, like it does every other time the world tries it, except this time it has AI on its side, and that could be a game changer. And then I thought of Ronald Reagan saying, any generation that has tasted freedom and loses it will never taste it again in their generation, okay? and it will be our children and our grandchildren. So I started playing this out over, an 80-year period, and thought, okay, so our children and our grandchildren, when the truth is taken from them, how will they find it? What will the world be like? And how will they even know what's true anymore if everything's been erased? And that was the seed of this book.
Most people have no idea who William Tyndale is
Mhm.
and his story and why someone would be chasing his embers. Can you explain that a little bit?
Mhm. Yeah, so William Tyndale, the secret to this book is I'm trying to get into culture. So this is a young adult book. It's, you could read it with your kids or you could read it yourself, and I think you would enjoy it. But it is a sneaky way, without getting preachy. Um, it's a sneaky way to introduce kids to history. So the book is full of rabbit holes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's secrets in the book. There's, little Easter eggs all through it, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many levels to this book. But the kids are looking for, the two teenagers in particular that we follow are looking for the truth. One um, it is rejecting the truth because it was how he was raised. He was in defense of all of the lies. But he's torn. He's a rebel, and so he doesn't know. And his character almost is driven insane when he finds out about William Tyndale.
Mm.
He doesn't believe it's true. He doesn't want to believe it's true. And what drives him crazy is that Tyndale died, as he says, for what? Paper? A story? But he doesn't understand, because God has been wiped out of this. He doesn't understand the power that those words that he was trying to get printed in his own native tongue, English, the Bible. He doesn't understand the power of that book, the power of that truth. And so part of the story is, how much is the truth worth? Why even look for it? It's only going to make you miserable. Yeah, it can make you miserable at first until you
Mm-hmm.
align your life with it. And then, even then, it might make your life miserable in a different sort of way, because they might kill you for it.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth changes you dramatically. And he can't understand that through the book. He doesn't want to believe that a man would die for what's written in a book.
Mm-hmm. On October 6th, 1536, is when William Tyndale was tied to the stake outside a castle near Brussels, and his final words were apparently, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." That was his final plea, not for his own safety, not for his own life, not for his own physical rescue, but the spiritual rescue of the King of England. And I think it's hard for
He wanted,
even us to understand that.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, what he went through, imagine, and this is the rabbit hole. We hope kids look him up and then start going, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
Every page of the Bible that was a Tyndale Bible was smuggled in a bag of flour or rice or something that came from the continent. He would go to printers all over Europe, and he'd say, I just need you to print this one page, backside and forward side. I just need you to pay this one. And they would say, you know what? You're in trouble with the king. I want no trouble here. I will
Mm-hmm.
print this, but I never see you again. And so they would printed every page of the Bible, and then they would smuggle these pages in as contraband. If you were caught with one page, it meant death. Okay. And he did this for years. And I have a copy of a Tyndale Bible upstairs, and it is it's from I don't remember, 88. It was in the London Museum like 200 years before we were even a country.
Wow.
And it's amazing because it was the first time that someone could, he didn't believe you should have to go to somebody to find out about God. You should be able to have that personal relationship and read for yourself what God wanted to say. But the king didn't want that because he would lose power.
Right.
Eventually, King James did change his mind. I mean, he wasn't the one that killed Tyndale, but he did change his mind. The king actually made the King James Version. But again, the reason that he did that is because he didn't want the Geneva Bible, which was the first Bible with commentary in it, where a king or a pharaoh could be called a tyrant. He didn't want any of that. So he puts his version out, the King James Version, which, you know, is the basic stock from everything that we use now.
Right. And this, of course, is coinciding with the Protestant Reformation and other
Yeah.
translations of Scripture, and the Bible and the gospel just spread like wildfire because of that belief. Like you said, that
Yeah.
people should have the Word of God in their hands, that they don't have to go through any kind of leader, whether it's secular or religious, to hear what God says, that we should be able to have it ourselves. And that is the nature of truth, too. That's just the nature of truth.
is.
I mean, that's the story of America, too. That when you have
is.
freedom in your hands, when you have your own will that can dictate your life, hopefully, ideally, under the submission of God's truth, yes, it's scary. Yes, there's risk to it, but it's worth it, and it's even worth dying for.
So it's amazing. This is why during COVID, they had to shut down the churches. This is why every dictator shuts down the churches, bans religion, because you can't have people who are willing to die for the truth. And, you know, when it comes to, if they asked me, put a bullet in my head right now and denounce the United States of America, otherwise we shoot you, I'd consider it. And probably today I could denounce everything that we're doing. Now, denounce God? Never. Never, ever, ever. Never. Because I know that is true, and God never changes. Man's understanding, man's description, everything else, that might change. But God and his truth never changes, and that makes people into warriors. I mean, Constantine, he knew that. You know, that's why he was baptized on his deathbed, because the king has to do some really bad things. And, you know, God understands that. Well, I'm not really sure, Constantine, that he does, but he was trying to cobble together an army. And that's why America was so strong. We learned the truths from the pulpit. We understood that our Constitution and much of our Declaration comes directly from Scriptures. The reason why our pilgrims were against the slave trade was because the Bible is against man-stealing. That's what they called it. That's a biblical reference, man-stealing. And they were servants of God. Almost everything we have came from God and the Bible. I mean, everything we have comes from God. But, you know, as a nation, anything good that we have came from God. And we have rejected him. And we have not just put him aside, we've put him now back in the town square to mock and ridicule him. It doesn't end well. It doesn't end well when you do that to truth.
You know, what you said about you can't have people, or you can't see people. The enemy doesn't want to see people dying for the sake of truth, dying for the sake of the gospel, because what strengthens our faith and our resolve more than seeing the death of a martyr, or seeing sacrifice and suffering in the midst of persecution? Someone like Jack Phillips, many, many others who, in the face of persecution and pushback, even to the point of death in some cases. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Even in a different way.
Yeah.
Look at what happened with the persecution and assassination attempt on Donald Trump. It changes people.
Yeah.
That's why this society is so intent on brutalizing people and erasing them. Make sure they're not even in the public square. You have to forget about those people. They have to convince you that this is too high of a price to pay just to stand up and say, you know, that shouldn't be taught in our schools. That's not right. I won't say that. It's got to be too high of a price. So they go after the leaders. They go after anybody that speaks the truth. They've gone after you. They've gone after me. They've gone after anybody who disagrees with them to silence not just them. Trump is right. I'm just in their way. They're coming for you. They want you to learn this lesson. We just happen to be in the way, Allie.
Yes, and they can addict us to our creature comforts and make us so comfortable and
Yes.
so addicted to convenience that the thought of sacrifice is radical and extreme. And that's part of why you wrote this book. That's part of what drives this main character crazy. Who would do this? Who would sacrifice themselves for truth? It comes out July 24th, correct?
No, it's out today.
It's out today. The
Today's
23rd.
the first day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's so
it's
exciting.
out today.
Okay, awesome. So everyone can get it wherever books are sold. Chasing Embers by Glenn Beck. Incredible. It's for young adults, but I'm sure the audience is really for anyone. Anyone
Yeah,
can get something from this.
anybody.
Thank you so much, Glenn.
Thanks, Allie. Thank you. Honestly, thank you for everything that you do. I am so proud to say I knew you when.
Well, thank you.
And to watch you grow and succeed has just been just a great joy.
Well, thank you so much for believing in me and always encouraging me. It means more than you know coming from you. So thank you so much, Glenn.
Thanks, Allie. You bet.